Social media addiction is literally rewiring our brains, and the numbers are staggering. The average person now spends over 2.5 hours daily scrolling through feeds, often without even realizing it.
That's such a jarring statistic when you really think about it. Over 17 hours per week, just scrolling.
And here's what makes this particularly concerning. Studies show that excessive social media use triggers the same brain patterns as drug addiction. The constant dopamine hits from likes and notifications are creating genuine dependency cycles.
You know what's fascinating about that? Even when we consciously know these platforms are designed to be addictive, we still can't seem to break free from them.
Let me break down exactly why that happens. Our brains release dopamine not just when we get likes or comments, but even in anticipation of them. It's the same mechanism that makes gambling so addictive.
So you're saying we're essentially carrying around tiny slot machines in our pockets?
That's exactly right. And here's the kicker. Social media platforms are specifically engineered to exploit these psychological vulnerabilities. The infinite scroll, the random reward timing of notifications, even the colors they use. It's all carefully crafted to keep us hooked.
That really makes me think about how this affects our mental health, especially when it comes to things like self-comparison and feelings of inadequacy.
Well, the research on this is pretty eye opening. Studies show that people who spend more than 3 hours daily on social media are 3 times more likely to experience symptoms of depression and anxiety. And what's particularly troubling is how this connects to our sense of self worth.
Oh wow, 3 times more likely. That's significantly higher than I would have expected.
And here's something even more surprising: the negative effects aren't just psychological. Social media overuse is actually changing our brain structure, particularly in areas related to attention span and emotional regulation.
That's really concerning when you consider how young people are being exposed to these platforms during crucial developmental stages.
You know what's particularly alarming about that? Research shows that teenagers who use social media for more than 5 hours daily have a 71% higher risk of suicide risk factors compared to those who use it for just 1 hour.
Those numbers are absolutely heartbreaking. How are we addressing this as a society?
Well, here's where it gets complicated. While some countries are implementing restrictions on social media use for minors, the global trend is actually moving toward more integration, not less. The average age of first social media exposure is now just 12 years old.
That seems so young when you consider the psychological impact we're discussing.
And let me tell you why that age is particularly problematic. The prefrontal cortex, which helps us control impulses and make rational decisions, isn't fully developed until around age 25. So we're essentially giving powerful psychological tools to people who aren't yet equipped to manage them.
So what can we actually do about this? There must be some practical solutions.
Here's what the research suggests works best. First, implementing strict time boundaries. Not just total time limits, but specific windows for social media use. Second, creating physical distance from our devices, especially during meals and before bedtime. And third, regularly auditing our emotional responses to different types of content.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about building awareness and intentionality into our usage patterns.
Exactly. And here's something interesting. Studies show that people who take even a 1 week break from social media report a 50% improvement in their mood and a 35% reduction in anxiety symptoms.
Those are some pretty compelling numbers for just 1 week of change.
And let me share something else that's fascinating. When people reduce their social media use, they don't just feel better mentally, they also report having more meaningful face to face interactions and better quality sleep.
That really highlights how these platforms affect multiple aspects of our well-being.
Here's the thing though, it's not about completely eliminating social media from our lives. These platforms can actually have positive effects when used mindfully. For instance, studies show that people who use social media primarily to maintain genuine connections with friends and family show better mental health outcomes than those who use it passively.
That's an important distinction between active and passive use.
Let me wrap this up with something actionable. The 30-minute rule has shown promising results in research. That's where you limit social media use to 30 minutes per day, spread across no more than 3 check ins. People who follow this rule report significantly better life satisfaction within just 2 weeks.
That sounds like a really manageable way to start making positive changes in our social media habits.
And here's my final thought: social media is a tool, and like any tool, its impact depends entirely on how we use it. By understanding both its benefits and its potential pitfalls, we can make more informed choices about how to integrate it into our lives in a way that supports rather than undermines our mental health.